We are ready to start stacking the walls here. So in this video, this building is going to start taking shape. You're going to start to see the roof line. But knee wall come over to about here, and then it's going to jut up like that, and it's going to be flat, and that's going to be a shed dormer on the back. And then on the front here, we got a gable dormer. We're going to have a gable beam coming into the main beam here, and then over here we're going to have valley beams coming in from the corners. And so we're going to keep this guardrail on here. That way we can actually use this to put up our first course. You can see that we didn't really get it crazy good on the outside. There was no reason to. It's all really rough. But that's fine to do that because we're going to just hang everything a little bit high, like 3/4 of an inch. And then once all these are set and shimmed up to be perfect, then we'll go back and take the great stuff foam and fill in the bottoms. There's no reason to stack it right on the floor, because if you're a 1/4 inch off, it's going to make things a little bit weird going up. But you have to link the two courses together to level them up, because one laps over the other one halfway, so it helps it stay up and straight. So we're going to lay the first two courses going all the way around, and then shim them up and put the great stuff foam underneath. And then you let that set up, and then you can go on top of that, and everything is perfectly level from there on out. back up. Alright, so this first wall here is done and just temporarily braced so the wind doesn't blow it down. You can see I already started around the corner. So I'm starting it off here. That's part of this piece instead of making it a separate piece. Same thing over there. That's the start of this gable end. So the roof will come down like this, and then over there it'll be a 3-pitch roof. And then above here we'll have some skylights. This wall actually went a lot quicker than I thought. I think a lot of that was because I drew this out in AutoCAD to make sure that everything lined up for the roof, because that's the most important thing. A lot of these places here we didn't even bother putting in rebar because you can put it in once the walls are all up, and then you can slip them in here. The only pieces we had to put in ahead of time were the corner pieces, and then we can just push the other pieces in from the edges before we put the bucks on this window. I'm gonna leave this wall alone for now. We'll put the bucks and bracing in later. I'm gonna start on that corner there so that I can get this gable all done. This telehandler is working out really good. That step down in the boom makes it so that you can load materials up high a lot easier. Before I got a telehandler, I never really realized that that little piece right there would make it so much more efficient, because these walls are going to keep going up, so having a step down like that really helps out. Because even when it's up there, even if this is 8 feet in the air, I can still get something from it. I just kept a basket on here to bring some of these forms up, and that worked pretty good too. And then on the way down, I'm just putting all the scraps in here. Alright, so I got the basic shape all laid out. So my plan was I'm going to have a bunch of windows on this gable end, but I didn't want to put them in there until the wall was all built. And then I want to go with a Sharpie marker and take some measurements, figure things out, lay it out on the wall before I actually make any cuts, because I'm going to have 4 trapezoid windows. There's going to be the center, which is going to have some concrete in it, and then I'm going to have 2 windows on each side of the center, and those will be a trapezoid, so it's like a triangle but then another short side on it. And then I'm also going to have some, probably the same window as that, just some slider windows, just one right there and one right there. Everything's symmetrical, so everything that's over here will match over there on the whole gable end, everything. So at this point I still need to put rebar in that wall from there up. I was putting it in on the flat spot, but then as soon as you get to the gable, it doesn't make sense to put it in there because you don't really know where it's going to until you make that line, and by that time the whole thing's already built. So it's easy enough to just bring the telehandler up there, sit right there, put the rebar in from the sides, and then that'll be good to go with the horizontals. We still got to do all the verticals. At this point the shape is formed, so I'm ready to do some detail work. I got to get all the rebar worked out, stirrups, windows cut out. Alright, so I got all these cut out and I started to install some rebar. I got my stirrups right here. So this is going to be like a beam all the way down. So we're going to put stirrups every 12 inches going all the way up this and all the way down that. And in the middle here, this is where a beam's going to set, but this is not taking that much weight. That's going to act as a column. This is going to act as a column. So we're going to put 4 number 4 bars in there too. Starting to lose all of our leaves here. You know what that means? It means we gotta hurry up. This is the spot where I need to leave a pocket for a column that's going to go in here to hold up the valley beam. The column's going to be 4x4 and it's going to sit just like this. And then, so right now I need to pour 3 inches of concrete in here and then leave a void from there to the outside. So I'm going to box this all off with just solid foam that I use from the build deck. So what I'm left with back here is actually 3.5 inches of concrete, and I need to do some special details to reinforce that. So because this wall is going to have that there, it's going to create a weak point right there. So we need to reinforce this better than usual. So what I've come up with for over here is a piece that's bent like this. It's got 2 hooks on the end, and I'll put this in there behind the pocket in that 3.5 inches of concrete. And if I do that, and it's kind of stitching the wall back together, even though it only has minimal concrete in there. And I have a bunch of other details too that I haven't been showing, because rebar is kind of hard to show on camera, but I have a piece here that goes down here, has a bend, and then goes up. And then I have rebar going across there. I got a lintel in there. I got the stirrups and the pieces on the top and bottom, because that's going to be a header. And it's not really carrying that much weight, but it's still a header. And then I treated all these like they're headers. And I put actually 3 bars in there. 1 on the top, 2 on the top, and 1 on the bottom. And I put stirrups going in between them. So this whole thing is a giant lintel here. And I didn't do it yet, but I'm going to make a bend that comes over and down this column, and then over and down this column here on both sides. And then on the top, there'll be pieces that go up and then they're bent down. Plus I have the pieces that are bent to go that angle right there. So there's a lot of steel in this wall. The idea with this column here is the engineer wanted me to leave a pocket for it, and then once this is poured, I'll go in and build all the steel. And after I have the column in there and the plates welded to it that holds the valley beam, and then the valley beam is set, the ridge beams are set, when everything's all set, then I'm going to go in here and infill it, which basically means I'm going to fill in all the voids around the column. But that's going to be afterwards. I got special stuff that I'm going to use for that. It's almost like liquid, but that's on a later video. And you really need to think about what you're doing, because I need to inset that 4x4 just enough to get some insulation around it. It's not going to be much, but I'm going to use spray foam to get the most R value. And so I have it set 1 inch away from the inside, which should be enough to stop condensation and stuff from forming. But I left enough room that I could even go 1.5 inches if I want to, and I might even do that, just to leave a little bit more insulation on the outside of that column so that it doesn't sweat. When I poured the walls downstairs, I told you guys about this build buck system, but I just want to go over it again. It's kind of neat the way it is. So this is like a cross section of it, and you can see that there's all these ribs that you can attach to. You can attach a new construction window from the outside through the flange, right through here. And then also there's the spots on the flat where if you want to use a replacement window, then you can also go right into there. Those spots right there. Any of the spots where there's bold, that's one of the spots that you can go into, as well as the sides. So this part here goes into the concrete, and then it holds it so that the build buck is secured into the concrete. The whole point of this is to cut off the thermal bridging from the concrete into the windowsill. So that's what this does. So the only connection that you're making is going to be between the fastener and these ribs right here. And there's very little thermal bridging in that. The rest of it's all insulated, so there's no thermal bridging. This is 2 inches thick. And it also has this little flange here that allows you to line it up. So it's like quick and easy, and it just kind of pops in there, and then you can adjust it. Like if you need to shim it up, you don't really need to shim it up. You can just kind of pull it up and let it stay. And then you put the great stuff foam in there to fill it in, and then it's perfect. So this makes a nice window bucking system. Got this all braced up here. There's not much left for the ribs inside of this piece right here, so that's why we had to put wood around the whole thing and then wrap 2x4s around it so that it can't bow out on the top or bow out on the bottom from the concrete. There's not a lot of concrete going in there, but it's enough to make things move if you don't have it braced up. I got a lot of rebar in here. Pieces bent down everywhere. Everything's got a 2-foot overlap or more. I got 2 bars bent around the top, 2 bars bent down like this, and then I got 4 bars going down. I got stirrups pretty much the whole way. That makes this whole thing a beam here. This is a lintel. It's not really even needed because the only weight that this is going to see is going to be from the overhang. I'm going to have 2 feet of overhang, so that's the weight that's going to go on here. But other than that, the roof is supported by the ridge beam here, ridge beam there, ridge beam there, and then it rests on that wall there. And then there's a little bit more weight on that little 4-foot section down there, and on that side and that side too. This is going to be a knockout for this spot. I still got to continue it up here, but this is going to be for that column that goes in there. So basically I'm just giving it like 3.5 inches of concrete left, and then we'll put the 4x4 column in and still have a little bit of insulation on the outside. We'll pull this out once it's poured, and then we can put the 4x4 column in here with the base plate, and then we can hang our steel. And then after all the beams are on and everything is set and bolted up, then we'll infill this. But I want the rest of the wall here to act as if nothing ever happened. So I put all the rebar in there, I put extra rebar in there, and then I made sure that the spacing is good on both sides of the rebars. That way it's not touching the column, and also it stays within the cover that's required for what's on there. once I put this through, then you don't need to hold this as well. Fast forward a few days, I got concrete coming in a little while, and it's raining. That's okay. I got a little canopy here. Canopy's not going to do a whole lot while I'm up there, but at least we can keep the tools out of the rain. I was going to cancel it, but then I'm looking at another week before I can pour, because the next few days is supposed to be raining, then I got to schedule it, and so it's like another whole week. So I'm just going to make do. I did a lot of work in here that it was just tedious work, like rebar and bracing and stuff. It's repetitive and tedious, so it's not really worth putting it on the camera. So everything is really super braced up. You can see we got the foam inserts here for the columns. Got our holes for inspection ports for the concrete to come up, plus you can put the vibrator down there, the 1-inch vibe anyways. The 2-inch vibe I'm not even going to use in an ICF wall. I used to use that for my Simon's forms, but 1-inch vibe is fine for these, because we also externally vibe them too with either the Sawzall or the palm sander. Palm sander's been working a little bit better. These areas here I had to brace a lot because the 2 ribs that are supposed to be here are not here, so that's not holding it together anymore. It's a truss type web design in there, so without those 2 you're relying on the ones out here, so I wanted to rely on both of them out here. We also put these cleats underneath the windows, that way the pressure doesn't go on the foam, it actually goes on these, which transfers it into the ribs right here. Because last time we had a problem where, because we were putting the weight on this sort of sagged down a little bit, which is not the end of the world, but I just figured it would be better to try to avoid that if I can. If I didn't do that, it would still be fine, and it was a lot of extra work, but I just want to make sure everything was fine. Anything right here. Let's just get to this. I'm gonna climb up here if you want to get this over. When we were pouring this, it was raining and it was kind of discouraging because the pump truck showed up late and like over an hour late, and the concrete was starting to set up by that time. Now I had put water reducer in the mix, so I was planning on getting this to like a 7 slump to pour it so that we didn't have to vibe it too much. You can do that with water reducer because it lets it flow easier with less water. So then you can add more water than you normally can and still have the 4,000 pound mix, that's what I ordered. So what we ended up doing was vibrating the important spots. So for instance, this spot right here, it's got like no concrete right there. It's like a V-shaped spot. Concrete came down and it came down. So there's plenty of concrete down here, but as soon as you get up here, now it's hollow. Nothing there. Which that may sound scary to people, but there's nothing that needs to do right there. That's just a filler. What we did concentrate on getting was spots like that and that. Those are lintels. So it's basically like a beam or a header, and that's important that you vibrate that real good. So we actually spent most of our time vibrating the important spots. It really was because the pump truck was so late that the concrete was sitting here for over an hour before it even got poured. And I've never had that happen before. The pump truck usually shows up a half an hour early, and then there's not an issue. They're always ahead of the concrete trucks. And I'm not going to point fingers. I'm not going to play the blame game. But, that is one thing that's really unfortunate about doing work like this. You're kind of at the mercy of other people and other companies. Like, I try to not do that as much as possible. I try to buy everything and not rent it. I try to do everything in-house and not sub out. That's just kind of how I have always worked, because I don't like depending on other people or other companies. But like the pump truck, I'm not going to go and buy a boom pump truck. That's crazy. I was going to buy a line pump, but then I got thinking about it, and Up here, it's probably not the best bet to be doing that, because when you're pouring vertical, I know a lot of guys say that you can do it, and you can, but I don't want to mess around with the pump on the day of the pour when I should be helping the guys do the work. Otherwise, you got to get more guys, and I don't really want to do that. So my plan was to take some Cementol and pour it in here, just fill it right up to the top. I was going to use like regular concrete, but then I figured it's kind of a small space, and that Cementol is like liquid when you put it in. It doesn't really have big rocks, but it's super strong, a lot stronger than concrete. So it's expensive, but it kind of is what it is. It's just a filler in there, really. The rebar is still in there, so it'll connect. It'll just have a cold joint, that's all. But that doesn't really matter, because that doesn't need any strength underneath of the window. Everybody always worries about the windows, but there's no strength needed. The only thing it's holding up is a window, and that's nothing. That foam could hold up the window. It doesn't even need the concrete in there. So we'll end up putting a funnel on here and just mixing this stuff up. You can mix it with a paddle, and we'll put it in. I'm not even going to put that on the video, but that's the plan. I'm wondering if any of you guys have ever had to do that before, because I've never had to do that, and I'm sure it's okay, but I'd just like to hear from somebody else that it was okay. You can see we put a lot of 4-foot pieces of rebar in. I actually did 4-foot pieces for any walls that are taking any weight, and then gable walls like that, they were only 3-foot pieces, mainly because I wasn't going to get much more in that. Doesn't make sense to go 4 feet, and then it's 3 feet sticking up. It only needs to be 2 feet sticking up, so that's fine. Luckily, from here on out, I don't think we're going to be using the pump truck anymore. Not because of this, just because that's just not how it's going to work. So the next few steps that we need to do here is that the next video is going to be all steel work. I need to set those columns in there. I need to set the ridge beam, and then I'm going to set this ridge beam for this gable going over to the main ridge beam. That's that W27 by 84. This is a W12 by 26. The valleys are, I think those are like W10s. I didn't get those yet. I got to figure that out. But I believe that's a 10-inch I-beam going from there into the center of the main ridge beam. So after we do all the steel work, then we can infill these columns here, and then we're ready to start doing the roof. And when we pour the roof, I don't think I'm going to do too much at once. Basically, the first pour is going to be that little 4-foot section over there, this little 4-foot section up here, and then I'll probably also do that roof right there at the same time, and that'll be like the first pour. And the second pour that we're going to do is going to be this section here, but it widens out as it gets to here. Most people would understand what I'm saying if you saw. So it's like a triangle section here, that whole triangle section, and then that whole triangle section there. That would be the second pour. And then the third pour would be this one going this way. So that would come out, and that would complete this area here, that one and that one. And then I'm going to do another pour over here for this one. That's probably the last one I'm going to do, because that's the easiest one right there. I started designing this house like 6 or 7 years ago, and I always wanted to do this right here. That was always really cool. And then I wanted to put part of it into this bedroom, which is just that triangle. That's going to be where the wall is, right there. And then the rest of this is just going to be for in this hallway here to give some light in here. And actually that is too. So all this will be for the hallway. This part right here was always something that I was really looking forward to. I kind of designed the house around it. And then this shed dormer on the back, I thought that would be kind of neat too. These little returns, I guess you could call them, on the side, they're not really functional, I guess. It's not really practical. It would be more practical to just have the whole roof one slope. But it looks really cool from the outside, and I figured if I'm going to be putting in the effort to do stuff like that, then I want to also just make the whole house look really nice. What's nice about this is that's almost 10 feet tall right there, and then it goes up from there to the ridge beam. But it's at a very low slope. It's like a 3-pitch. And so I'm going to also have some skylights in there. But I think it is very feasible to get this whole roof on before we see freezing weather. Because right now it's like 70 degrees out. So we still have plenty of time. It shouldn't take me too long to do the steel work, and then I'll immediately jump on the roof. I do need to kind of wait a little while to set these beams. I don't want to just start setting big giant beams up here instantly. because this wall is still curing. Ideally, you should wait like 30 days. But the better plan for me is I'm not really looking to put a lot of weight on these walls yet. So I can get away with not waiting 30 days. So in other words, when I set this beam, that's only 2,700 pounds. And then you divide that in two, and that's what that would hold. And then the other one would hold the rest. So the amount of steel that I'm putting up here, it's not really that big of a deal. Like I could set it tomorrow, like 2 days after the pour, and it would be fine. But I also don't want to like knock into the wall with the beam or something and then have something happen. Because right now the wall is still curing, so if you knock into it laterally, it could move. But after curing for like a week or two, it's probably fine, and we'll try to go really slow so we don't hit the walls with the beam. And then even for starting to form for the roof, we're not going to be putting any weight on anything until we actually pour. So by the time we're actually pouring the first part of the roof, this will be cured for 30 days or so. And even if it's not 30 days yet, really we're putting the weight down here. We're not putting it up there. So ideally, you could really just keep going right away. There's really nothing in this project that you have to wait for. I thought I was going to have to wait 30 days in between each thing, but then I realized that every time you do one step, the next step doesn't involve putting any weight on the last step. So you're actually doing another step in between. So that actually works out really nice. Because if you're pouring like the first floor, you wouldn't want to pour the second floor like the next week after that. You'd want to wait for it to cure first. But you're actually not. You're going to be pouring the floor next, and then you pour the next wall. And by that time, you're 30 days cured. So it's pretty efficient the way this works out. You're not really waiting on anything at any time, except for this moment right here. I just don't want to put a lot of stress putting up the steel beams, but you could do it. It's better not to, because that is one massive beam that's coming up here. The weight is not that much, but it's 27 inches tall and 10 inches wide. It's got a 3/4 inch flange on it, so that's a pretty substantial piece of steel in the air. And I also got a treat for you guys coming up for that too. I actually I had to buy something to make this work better, the next video. So you guys will see that coming up real soon. But until then, we're going to keep going on setting up the columns and welding things together, getting some steel. So I will see you guys on those videos.